give the person a second chance to walk with that person. And, I just remember it to be, wow, you know. Welcome back to another episode of The Grind. Today we are talking about a topic that I think is a challenging one.
It is.
I believe so.
I believe so.
I don't think so. I know so.
Yes. It's a submission to authority.
Yeah.
And I think, Pastor Fron, shared about it and broke it down, the importance of why we need to submit to authority. Sharing from the perspective of Peter, a man who clearly didn't really exactly submit to authority and then did a 180 and is now writing about submitting to authority. So that is quite a journey that he's been on. But first things first, we've all been under authority, at some point in our life and everything. Who are some people in authority that you've looked up to in your life?
It's a very good question.
I might say so myself.
I had a teacher who was also a coach for me in certain sports, and then later became my boss. I will give you one guess as to who that is.
Oh, I wonder who does that.
Who is that?
Peter Jung.
Peter Jung.
Oh.
Jungie. Yeah. So, Mans has been around for a long time.
He has.
Yeah. In many different positions of authority. He's a teacher, and he knows, like, especially in my preferred subject of PE, he knew how to help me excel at it. And then later on, when I came to work with him, it's just like how he lives his life, and he's a really good example of what it is to be Christ-like.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It covers all the bases, I think.
Yeah.
I think for me, there was one time I had when I was still teaching music instruments, and I used to go to this father. He's father of the students that I'm teaching, and he was giving me a lot of different advices about just life in general.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much the person that I would actually look up to in terms of sometimes with my decision making as well, and even his advices in parenting. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, staying along the lines of education and teachers, that was this teacher that I had, English teacher, and I just looked up to him because I think what I really appreciated about him was how he took the effort to connect with his students. Send out weekly emails, whatever it is. I'm maybe not every student read it, but I appreciate the fact that he took the time to just connect and check in on us. And even when we graduated and stuff, he kind of sent a congratulatory message and was well done, guys. And then I know for some times where there were people who messed up, he didn't immediately condemn them and send them off to detention or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He basically took the time to explain, he basically showed grace. And I think that really, even though it wasn't to me, but it was to a classmate of mine, I just appreciated that moment of, he had every right to just be boom, you're off to detention.
I think most teachers would do that, though.
You're like
a
It's the
witness.
easy way out.
It's the easy way. Don't they deal with it? Someone else's
Yeah.
problem. He chose to give the person a second chance to walk with that person, and I just remember it to be, wow, yeah. I think, I really appreciate that, and so I mean, just imagine this was a high school teacher,
Yeah.
and he definitely had an impact on my life. So, yeah. When it comes to authority, right? I'm sure we can all agree that when it comes to good people, good leaders, we find it so much easier to submit to them, right? But then, what about the people that we don't agree with? Who's over us? What about the people who we don't necessarily like or care for, right? You can't bust out the whole we're under God, but we're not under the supervision of man, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit difficult at those times, challenging, I would say, at those times. So what does the word authorities mean to you, and what authorities are you under at this time?
Excellent.
Well, I think, of course, if you're going to be talking about authority, the first thing I could think of is like you being a follower, like you're following that particular sort of person who's, I would say, above you, who has the decision making, like the who has the last say, if I should say. So, what was the next question? Sorry, guys.
What authorities are you under?
What
at this
authorities
time?
are you under?
Under ICA?
Good answer, ICA employee.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm under a good one. So,
Authorities are
oh man.
people who have been placed above you, and
Yeah.
You are hopefully under their care. I mean, that in an ideal world, I think.
I feel like Petrina's like saying, is that me?
I am making no implications here. You take that statement to mean whatever you want it to mean. What authorities are you under at this time? The authority of ICA. All of its entire umbrella.
Yes, that's true.
My
Wow.
fiance.
Wow.
Learning how to submit already before marriage. This guy is on the right track.
Yeah.
Making of a good husband right here.
Congratulations,
Sure.
bro.
Thank you.
Wow.
Wow. Yes, how do I even follow that? The word authorities mean to me, I think just people in charge, people who are, they're set in place to make certain decisions.
Yeah.
And authorities that I'm under, definitely
Go on. Just complete the set.
ICA. But obviously, specifically senior pastor. And,
Yes.
And yeah. So now we talked. One of the verses mentioned to be subject. That's what Peter said. Be subject to every human institution, and basically, be subject is to acknowledge the given power and submit to the person in authority. Basically, submit oneself under a certain kind of relationship. And okay, so here's a question: how does submission in church differ
Differentiate?
differ from submission to authority in the world? Like, how does submission, like for example, in like say the worldly aspect, right? You submit to authority because like, oh, that person has power, that person has money, or that person has some sort of influence, and that's why you follow them, right? Whereas in church, you don't necessarily look at that. It looks at family. It looks at, you submit to each other because of what Christ has done. It's based off godly principles, not like what you have or have not done.
I feel like that line blurs now, though.
Yeah, what do you
Yeah.
explain, expound?
There are certain people in Christian circles now who you would look at and say they have power and money and respect, right? And so even if you were to hypothetically disagree with them and not want to submit to their authority, because you are maybe in a church environment where God has placed that person in that position, then you would at least try to find something within yourself to submit to that authority, I think. Yeah. So I feel like those lines blur now.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the world is not perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not black and white. So
Because then the next question would be, what's the difference or balance between respecting and submission?
How to describe that? I mean, like,
Like,
because you don't, like, for example, if you're talking about fear, it's just that you don't do that particular thing is because you don't want to be or being like scolded or being reprimanded of your actions. While as if it's submitting through respect, is because you really think highly of the person.
yeah.
like you revere that person.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I'm doing this because I totally believe in the direction that you're going.
Yeah, and I sort of see your big picture, like the big picture that you have, and I want to be part of that. So
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think sometimes by disagreeing, or at least maybe this is like a millennials way of thinking, but sometimes by disagreeing, you are actually showing respect to your to the figure of authority.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you can see them clearly going wrong,
Yeah.
right? If you were to not point that out, and you know, and it would subsequently lead to disaster, let's say.
Right.
Like, how is that like? I don't feel as though that is like respecting their authority.
Yeah.
Right. You're there to kind of like maybe help steer them in the right direction sometimes.
Yeah.
Although on the surface at that time it may not seem like you are being respectful
or submissive.
Or submissive.
Yeah.
And I think some people find that a problem, right? As maybe the older generation might be like, "Oh, you're questioning my decisions, like you're not submitting to me right now."
Yeah.
And it's
It's very challenging actually.
Yeah.
There's a very fine line because sometimes like also respect can be built as well. Like sometimes like I don't know if you guys have encountered experiences where you're actually working under a person and at the beginning you don't have much. I mean, like of course you respect them based on their position.
Yeah.
But gradually you start understanding who they are, and and if I'm gonna be putting it in the context of like when you're asking questions, they sort of what do we call this? They take it seriously. Your comments, like saying, "Oh, actually, I kind of disagree with what you're saying, but this can be done," and stuff like that. And then he sort of or she kind of thinks about it and says, like, "You know what? Maybe we can work it out." Something like that. Like it doesn't really mean that they need to agree with it, but it's the fact that they've took it into consideration. That particular action itself can also sort of help you build the respect not only for you but for him as well, because he knows that you or she knows that you're actually taking things seriously with the things that he's actually saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, definitely find balance between like how do you come off as not sounding rude,
Yeah.
and then also like genuinely like want the better, like the better things. Because I know I've definitely have been in this journey of like speaking without tact. And so even though I genuinely don't understand why things are being done, but because of the attitude and the way I say it, people like would think that I'm being disrespectful, and hence may not seem as though I'm like, like tangwa, like you're listening,
I don't know what tangwa means.
I mean,
Obedient.
Yeah, that's the word. Obedient. Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's what they use to describe kids. Oh, that kid is like, anyways. So
Such a good kid.
such a good kid.
Petrina ho tangwa.
Yes, Petrina ho tangwa. Thank you. So Peter was very clear on why we needed to be subject to every human institution. It's for the Lord's sake. It's the will of the Lord. And yes, the world is not perfect, and there are going to be institutions that are not that great. They're unjust. I mean, look at the world. There's just things going on, and I'm not here to like criticize or bash on different institutions.
It's just reality.
It's just a reality that there are just some very imperfect ones. So my question is this: have you ever had to submit to those who are unjust, and what is your advice to those who are under unjust authorities?
I think anyone who has worked in the corporate world has probably had to listen to or submit to authority that was unjust, or do things that they didn't agree with. And I don't know if I have any advice. Maybe just
Suck it up. No, actually don't.
you know what? Sometimes
It is.
that is just the way to go. It is what it is. Maybe your boss isn't listening to you, wants things done a certain way. Then you just got to do it. I think. But like you said, the world's not perfect. There's always going to be injustice, and I think we have to learn at some point to live with it, or maybe just pick your battles. So, and then also just have the hope that there is this is not forever.
Yeah.
There's more beyond said injustice.
True.
Yeah.
I agree with you, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because if I'm gonna be setting an example, of course it has something to do with corporate as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never experienced having any unjust things in my family life. So I think the only unjust thing is like being the oldest son, like
Yes.
oldest kid.
Oh, tell me about
So
it.
there are certain things like, yeah, your younger son, your younger brother lah, just be nice to him. He doesn't.
You're the
understand
older
why."
one. You
You're
should
the
know
older one. You
better.
should be
You
the
know
one who
better.
You guys
understands.
should be nice to the younger sibling.
Shut
Yeah.
up.
You guys
Go away.
need to learn to look
Stop
after
talking.
the younger sibling.
No.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's the that's just repressed memories. That's the unjustness I faced growing up, just because my brother is cute and you know what, it's fine.
On the other hand, I feel like it is perfectly just.
You can leave now, bro.
Like I said, these are gray areas.
Great areas. Definitely unjust authorities. I mean, just thinking about, you know, they're again going back to, you know, school, right? There are teachers that I didn't necessarily appreciate or liked, and they did things that I thought was unfair, but yet I still have to submit to them, right? Because they
Yeah,
be my teacher,
unfortunately.
and they be deciding my grades, so I have to.
Yeah.
And that's where it's not necessarily submitting because it's what God told me to do. I'm submitting because I gotta get stuff done.
Yeah.
You know? And then you see different institutions where, you know, clearly people are being wronged, but then yet they still get away. Like, where is, like, because I think in me I have a huge justice, you know, system, like in my heart, and which is why, like,
Sure, yeah.
sometimes, like, you know, seeing women get, you know, like they place their lives in trusting these people who are in so-called authority, and they were scammed, and then they've been, you know, trafficked off to be sex workers, and that it's their parents, right, who was the one who sold them off. Again, how is that just? How is that?
It's not.
It's not, right?
It's not.
So it's just like, where do you balance all of that? And just talk about this makes me want to, like, you know, get, you know. But that's not our place to judge, you know. And I can't imagine being in that situation, you know, where am I supposed to submit to my parents' authority then when they want to sell me off so that they can get money? Like, where's the balance in that, right? And I think this can go into a whole different situation. But if we were to think about the one person who suffered the most like unjust situation, but then chose to submit to authority and willingly went to his death, it was Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And Jesus, he died on that cross very unjustly
Yeah.
so that we can have eternal life. I guess he desires a relationship with us, and therefore he died for us, right?
Yeah.
How does now knowing this change or shape your view on submission to authority?
I think the only thing that I need to put in my mindset as well is just the fact that no matter what kind of authority or what let's say leaders or people who are given in that position, just need to remind whether it's just or not. There's a reason they were placed there, and for me, I will just put my hopes in God, knowing that He has placed these people in that position for a reason, and no matter whether they're, of course, all of them are going to be imperfect. All of us are not perfect, but we just have to know that the Lord has already paved the way of things to do, and will eventually be good. So yeah.
Yeah, or maybe it's just like you said, God's paved the way. He's got a plan and a will for us, and so maybe the best thing to do is to just make sure you are on that path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even if you do face like authority and the prospect of submitting to that authority that you don't like, you can do that in the knowledge that this is the path that God has set you on.
Yeah.
And what He wants for you. So, like, it's almost like having blinkers on. Just follow that, and just like push through it.
Yeah.
Because like Jesus, before He went to the cross, He didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But then after praying, He had His blinkers on and He went.
Yeah.
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 So I think knowing that one of the things that Pastor Fran talked about is entrust. Basically, entrust is to basically let go and trust Jesus. So Jesus, he let go of his life to the Lord and trusted him and died on the cross for us.
Yeah.
And so if we want to be truly Christ-like, that's basically following along the path of what Jesus walked, trusting God. And
Yeah.
he was always in constant communication with the Lord, so he knew what was exactly going on. And so likewise, sometimes we may not understand why we go through what we go through.
Yeah.
But I think when we're in constant communication with the Lord, when we're talking to him, and also our feelings are valid. So
Yeah.
even though things may be unjust, whatever, we can still communicate, we can process with the Lord. And I think just at the end of the day, have an attitude of trusting
Amen.
and submitting and know that the Lord knows the best. I
Yeah.
think that can be sufficient
Amen.
to see through. Anyways, yeah, I know it's a hard topic, and maybe some of us here are still struggling with that, but do
Yeah.
know that you're not alone in the struggle, and that we're always here to process
Yep.
together. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you for next week's grind. Bye.
Bye.